Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Today we're going to do a little talk about The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's a book. And we'll take a look here at the marina. We're staying at a marina for it ended up being 2 days because of a small craft advisory, but we're going to be leaving in a bit. So, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior is a book that I encountered, I think I was 15. I may have been 14 still. I think it was 15. And it was really weird because it was right at a phase of life where, everything's changing. And this is Gen X, so things are a little different. It wasn't actually impossible for a 14-year-old to get a fast food job. They were just limited to 2 4-hour shifts a week or something. Paper routes, we all had paper routes. We were all out more. Latchkey kids. We were out till midnight on our own. Curfews for kids did not exist. That was actually something that I first heard of in the later 80s when I turned 17, I think is when I heard of people doing curfews on the East Coast. And I was not on the East Coast. We would have all-night beach parties, all-night desert parties. It was a different world. So when I say 14 or 15, you could probably translate that to 17 or 18 in modern terms. There was a not unnoticeable number of people from 16, 17 age range who lived in the garage at a friend's house or something and paid rent. And there was a lot of cultural difference. There was a lot more independence. And I don't understand how to explain that so that it makes sense to people. But it's important because I ran into this book, and I have a very strange brain. I live in a world of magic, and I've seen stuff. And it's not that I'm gullible, but I don't rely on mundane explanations for everything. Causality is very, very wiggly, and people try to make it more important than the events themselves, and I think that's probably a big mistake. So I don't have a lot of causality worship. And of course, I hop the fence and I live in a totally different world anyway. Everything's connected. Anyhow, but one of the things that I've tried to do recently for no particular reason, just because it's in there with Jeffrey's stuff, with his fundamental well-being stuff in his classes, 45 Days to Awakening, which I've helped mentor. He talks about people who've been in fundamental well-being, in that state of enlightenment all their lives, or started out that way and then had it ripped out of them, and you have to find it again. And the possibility, he doesn't put any weight on this, but the possibility that there is a fundamental shift in humanity and that people are just being born as, avatars, whatever you want to call it. And so I kind of explore this because I've had a sense of difference in a positive way for large segments of my life. And I read The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and I was 15. I was 15. I turned 15 at the beginning of every school year. My birthday was at the beginning of every school year, so I turned 15 a couple weeks into the school year, so things get a little hazy with the exact age number. But figure sophomore year. And I read it, and the first, 2/3 of the book, the first big section of the book, I took at face value. Now, it's a fictionalized book that has a lot of lessons and a lot of hippy-dippy shit about stuff that was popular at the time, like this meditation technique or that way of eating or whatever. But the lessons are in there, and the lessons are about this kind of layer that's behind all of the crystal weenie hippy dippy shit. That there's a layer behind it, a layer of reality, a layer of real stuff, and it doesn't matter whether you're into the crystals or the TM, the transcendental meditation, or the making art out of your food, or the raw foodism itself, or whatever. It doesn't matter which part you're embracing. It's if you're reaching behind the product to the meat, to the soul of it, then good things happen. And, I wasn't getting that. I was getting a story that I was taking at face value as if it was actually biographical. And then there was a segment in there that just broke the ability to believe, the whole Joyce thing towards the end, where he gets robbed of his memory and has to go off and do his life and then rediscover himself after he wastes his life as an insurance agent or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that part never didn't mean anything to me. I was 15, but it struck me as unbelievable. Not that it can't happen, but it didn't fit the story. I know it happens. I was sitting there as a teenager in Gen X watching the boomers sell out and lose their souls to retirement plans. It was the 80s. It was the decade of greed. All the hippies were busy stabbing each other in the back for, stock options. And it was kind of a, there was a point to that part of the book that I did not get at the time. But I read it as autobiographical and not as fiction. And it works. Like, it totally worked. There's nothing unbelievable to me. And here's the thing about so much of this. So much of reading that book was like it was a reminder. This wasn't new knowledge. This wasn't a, where are you? Here. What time is it? Now. That's like a big theme in the book. And it's a really big deal. You get all spun up about a bunch of bullshit, and it's like, hey, stop. Where are you? You're right here. What time is it? Right now. Be here. Be now. And I don't mean that in the weird sense that you get it from so many people. Oh, I want to practice my be here now. I want to practice. It's not a practice. It's a switch. It's what meditation in many forms actually is breaking free of being out of your time and out of your place and being present. And it doesn't mean you. It doesn't mean solidifying an identity that's present. It just means here, now. It's a universal thing. It's actually very hard to explain. So I think that's one of the reasons people get off the wrong track on it. But the lessons in there, stuff like that, the body work, the dietary stuff, it's all kind of funky. And some of it's just flat out wrong. But it was all like a reminder. Like, it wasn't stuff that I was reading for the first time. It was reminders about behavior or magic or essence. Let's call it essence. And that's what really struck me, is that for me, it was, I was sharing this book with friends, and I'm like, hey, this is just like how life is. This is what it's like. This is what I see when I sit down on the football field and watch the sunrise, because I get to school at ridiculous hours in the morning because I don't like my family, or I don't like their morning life. But that's what I see. And people didn't really get that. They're like, oh, that's nice. But they didn't get that this was a reminder for me. It wasn't a wake up. It wasn't a new thing. It was a reminder. And I think, there's some parts of that book that I think really stuck with me as core presuppositions about life that people don't get. So there's this dude who works at the gas station, and that's not really important. He's just there because he's got to get a little bit of cash for some reason or another, so he's doing some working. He's not into it. He's not in there to retire. He's not in there to invest. He's not in there to get the super hyper maxing or whatever. He's not 10xing his job as a nighttime gas station worker who does mechanics on the side. He's just a dude, and this is what he does. And it suits him because he doesn't sleep a lot. And that there's an aspect to that is just so okay. And it's really hard to I don't mesh with other people in that sense. I don't want to dedicate myself to the work for the sake of the work, for the sake of the profit, for the sake of anything. If I work, it's cool. Like, it's part of life. It's actually really good, and I probably should do some more of it soon. But there's phases for it. There's times when you work and there's times when you don't work. Blah. But it's more that it's a part of life. It's not a drive. It's not your moral code. It's not what makes things work. And it's really hard to explain where that book hit me, how deep that presupposition is in my life. Because I don't have that need to place my life below my economic behavior, to say that my life is less important. I think that's really, really a big deal. Like, you get one of the flavors of the book that you get is that it's okay to be a gas station attendant who's a holy man and not spread it around, not do all this other crazy stuff, not be a video game. It's okay to just be chill. Go hike in the park, go surf on the beach, and be okay. So, I don't know. Just thinking about that this morning, because there's such a flavor to that, and the movie really didn't capture it. But there's such a flavor to that that's missing. What in your life is important besides your job, besides your savings, besides your programmed fear of running out of money? What's important? Anyway, stay sideways.